Majora's Mask has well over 100 items that you can collect throughout an entire playthrough. 21 permanent items, 24 masks, 1 sword, 1 shield, 4 boss remains, 10 songs, 4 item upgrades, 4 heart containers, 52 pieces of heart, and 2 magic upgrades. The vast majority of these are completely optional to collect, and even more can be skipped through the use of various glitches. But what items do we have no choice but to collect in order to complete the game? The answer to this is much more interesting than you might think. Low percent speedruns are found in nearly every single Zelda game, and requires completing the game with the least amount of items collected as possible. In Majora's Mask, we have 2 main versions of this category: 5 item low percent and 15 item low percent. Representing low percent runs that utilize the stale reference manipulation glitch, and runs that do not. However, is this really the lowest amount of items that we have to collect? The answer, of course, is no. Before we get into what items we need to collect, we need to talk about what items actually count towards the total item count at the end of the run. In Majora's Mask, this is actually just a really easy qualification to make. Items that count towards the final item count simply are items that are not removed whenever you play the Song of Time. This means that trade items and bottle contents do not count towards our final item count. Additionally, items that are equipped to C buttons but do not exist in our inventory screen also do not count, which may seem like a very strange qualification to make, but it'll make more sense in the future. This means that the items that can contribute to the final item count are the 21 permanent items on the item screen, the 24 masks on the mask screen, the gilded sword, the mirror shield, the 4 boss remains, all 10 songs, the 2 quiver and 2 bomb bag upgrades, the 4 boss heart containers, the 52 pieces of heart, the bomber's notebook, the 2 magic upgrades, double defense, and the great spin. With these qualifications in place, what are the lowest possible number of items that you can get and beat the game with using stale reference manipulation? 1. Just 1 item is required to complete the entirety of Majora's Mask, the very first magic upgrade. In the Majora's Mask any percent speedrun, we currently collect 2 items, the magic upgrade and the Deku Nuts. The any percent speedrun manages to do this by performing stale reference manipulation using a Deku Bubble, which requires magic. This is in order to equip the Goron Mask, Fierce Deity Mask, and Hookshot. And equipping these items requires an item on the item menu in order to be able to bring the cursor onto the screen. Due to the items being equipped not technically being acquired in our inventory, they do not contribute to the total item count. But how do we drop this 2 item requirement to just 1? Currently, we acquire the Deku Nuts simply because they are the fastest item that we can acquire as Deku Link at first cycle. However, if you remember earlier, I said that trade items do not count towards the final item total due to them being reset whenever you play the Song of Time. Thankfully, in first cycle we have access to the Moons tier, a trade slot item that appears on our item subscreen. So if we acquire the Moons tier from the observatory, then perform first cycle stale reference manipulation, we can complete Majora's Mask with magic being the only permanent item collected. And to take this one step further, if you think that not counting the items equipped via stale reference manipulation is cheating, we can actually just equip the Goron Mask to turn human, then equip the hookshot over it in order to perform the Moon Warp, leaving our final item count at 2, which is still 3 less than the previous low percent item count. But what most people are interested in, and I'm sure you probably are too, is how many items we need to collect without the use of stale reference manipulation. The culture surrounding Majora's Mask speedruns have always made a distinction between runs that use stale reference manipulation and ones that do not. Without the use of stale reference manipulation, our current item count total is at 15 items. The items required are Magic, the Ocarina, the Song of Time, the Song of Healing, the Deku Mask, the Zora Mask, the Blast Mask, a Deku Stick, the Sonata of Awakening, the New Wave Bossa Nova, the Oath to Order, and the 4 boss remains. Some of these required items may not make a ton of sense at first, so let's break down the reason why these items are required and potential ways to skip them. In terms of Magic, Ocarina, and the Song of Time, this is due to the fact that we currently do not have a good way to skip first cycle without the use of SRM. While we can turn human in first cycle, we do not have a way to skip the Ocarina and in extension, the Song of Time. I saw a really great video on this subject by this guy you should definitely check out. Additionally, performing human in first cycle requires acquiring the Keaton Mask and Magic, so it can only really reduce our item count by 1. Since we aren't performing human in first cycle, we have no option but to acquire the Deku Mask and Song of Healing, both of which we'll need to use later anyways. The Zora Mask and New Wave Bossa Nova are both items that we will probably never be able to skip, as both are required to raise the turtle and enter the Great Bay Temple. The entrance to this dungeon does not exist without raising the turtle, so unless we magically find a way to wrong warp into the dungeon, we're stuck with these 2 items in our item count. The Sonata of Awakening is a slightly different story though. While this song is also required to raise Woodfall Temple, the loading zone to this dungeon actually does exist below the map. However, it is surrounded by out of bounds water, which in Majora's Mask will void you out instantly upon contact. If we could find some way to avoid this, we could easily skip the Sonata of Awakening. Additionally, there is a wrong warp that we can perform to enter the Odolwa fight, which would also skip the Sonata of Awakening. However, it requires the use of Epona, which in turn requires Epona's song, meaning that we could not save an item by performing this. The oaths to order and the boss remains are required to be able to get to the moon and complete the game, so we also don't have a chance of being able to skip these. But what about the Blast Mask and Deku Stick? These seem like pretty strange inclusions, right? The inclusion of these 2 items are actually related. Blast Mask is primarily used to hover to the hidden owl in West Clocktown. This also allows us to perform another glitch that is vital to skipping the bow and every elemental arrow through another glitch known as Zeroth Day. While I have another video entirely dedicated to Zeroth Day, the premise of the glitch that matters for this run is the state restoring effect. By saving at the hidden owl and storing the Song of Time, pressing yes on the Song of Time prompt will allow us to use any item in any form. Doing so in the Goat boss room as Deku Link allows us to shoot a fire arrow out of the Deku Stick, without a bow or fire arrows. This is due to Deku Bubbles essentially being a different form of arrow in the game's code. This allows us to skip the only required section of the game that requires fire arrows, Melting Goat. Skipping light arrows on the other hand is a bit more involved. Using another glitch known as Weird Bee, we can make the game think that the Zora's B button attack is actually a bottle containing a seahorse, which we can then use to dupe a bottle over our trade slot, allowing us to have a bottle in our inventory without it counting towards our endgame item count. We can then fill this bottle with spring water, perform a very high Blast Mask cover over the entrance of Stone Tower, and dump it out. One quirk of the game's code is that light arrows and spring water share the same properties, meaning this dumped spring water will flip the Stone Tower Temple. We can then hover out of bounds to skip the boss key and defeat Twin Mold using the Blast Mask. Skipping the Blast Mask and Deku Sticks is unrealistic in a low percent speedrun due to how many items they actually cut out. So that's how we can beat Majora's Mask with only 15 items. But what are the items that are always required to beat the game and have absolutely no way to be skipped within current knowledge? Currently, the items that every single Majora's Mask speedrun without stale reference manipulation are Magic, the Ocarina, and Song of Time. The Ocarina required to properly travel to the moon and acquire the Song of Healing and Deku Mask. Magic is required to get this Ocarina, and the Song of Time comes alongside the Ocarina. The Song of Healing is required in order to get the Zora Mask, and the Deku Mask is acquired at the same time, making these 2 completely unskippable. As I said earlier, the Zora Mask and New Wave Bossa Nova are required for entering the Great Bay Temple, and also make the list of unskippable items. The Oath to Order and Boss Remains are also required in order to get to the moon and complete the game. This leaves the total count of completely unskippable items at 12. Some way to skip any of these items would have the potential to completely reshape Majora's Mask speedruns. But until then, this has been Jake. If you enjoyed the video, consider clicking on the true unskippable item, the subscribe button, and click on one of the videos on screen to see more videos about Zelda speedruns and glitches. If you really want me to love you, check me out on Twitch, where I stream myself speedrunning your favorite Zelda games.